Hey, this lyric, I heard you let that little friend of mine take off your party dress. Elvis Costello, who could forget? What a great lyric. I heard you let that little friend of mine take off your party dress. I guess he'll be singing it tonight at Parks Casino. Parks Casino and Sportsbook, the number one casino in Pennsylvania. Headliners all year round. Elvis Costello tonight. Blondie next week. Comedian Dimitri Martin. Australian Pink Floyd. I've never seen Australian Pink Floyd. Hey, I'd like to see Australian Roger Waters. Check it out. The only casino and sportsbook I recommend. Concerts, dining, action, excitement. It's all under one roof. What a great place to be, especially in the summer. Visit parkscasino.com for the details. You got to be 21 or older. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Time now for the headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. Here's my question. What possible motivation would Trump have to hold on to classified information that relates to nukes? I mean, that's mostly what I want to know. It's too open-ended to ask as a survey or poll question at Smerconish.com. So instead, and after a lot of thought, I mean, David Brooks wrote a piece for the New York Times today. Did he put a question mark after it? No, here's what it was. Did the FBI just reelect Donald Trump? And I almost went with that, but then people would see the headlines and they wouldn't know that it was Brooks and they'd misconstrue it. I decided not to do it. But this is the poll question at Smerconish.com today. A little wordy, but I'm trying to convey something specific. When we know what was found at Mar-a-Lago, will we reach consensus as to the propriety of the search? You know, when all is said and done and the dust settles and we all know, you know, what was in the files, what kind of files they were, at that point, will there be a consensus as to, oh yeah, you know, I guess Merrick Garland had no choice, or wow, what an overreach that was by Merrick Garland? My answer is no. I think we're too dug in. Anyone who listens to me on a regular basis knows that I believe the polarized media in this country call too many shots. They have outsized influence. And once again, they are defining the battle lines. Yesterday, so many developments regarding Trump. I had wondered aloud. In fact, I have a distinct recollection of a female caller yesterday in a nice way, you know, taking issue with me and saying, hey, I think you've been too soft on this. What is it that you wanted the Justice Department to do? And I responded to her and I said, I wanted the Justice Department to issue a subpoena. Okay, yesterday we learned that a subpoena was issued. New York Times coverage. Months before the FBI arrived at Mar-a-Lago, Mr. Trump had received a subpoena this spring in a search of documents that federal investigators believed he'd failed to turn over earlier in the year. The existence of the subpoena helps to flesh out the sequence of events that led to the search and suggests that the Justice Department tried methods short of a search warrant. I had been asking, why didn't they issue a subpoena? Well, they did, and it yielded documents, but he didn't give them all the documents. Does that then end the issue of, well, they did send a subpoena, therefore they were justified in executing a search warrant? Not really. Because one of my reactions is to ask, well, why didn't they then file a motion to compel? Or why didn't they issue a second subpoena? I mean, I have some process questions I'd really like to know the answer to. Okay, now enter the Washington Post. And of course, the Times story and the Post story, everything I reference, posted at Smerconish.com and contained in the newsletter. From the Washington Post, this bombshell. Classified documents relating to nuclear weapons were among the items FBI agents sought in a search of former President Trump's Florida residence on Monday, according to people familiar with the investigation. What exactly does that mean? Classified documents relating to nuclear weapons. We really don't know. We do not know. It would seem pretty definitive, wouldn't it? And if the guy had nuclear secrets kept in boxes. They call them banker boxes. It's funny. I was just at Staples this week, and I had to buy a couple of banker boxes, those sort of legalese cardboard boxes that take the long form, the legal files. If he had nuclear secrets in the basement at Mar-a-Lago next to his golf shoes and the sport coats that no longer fit, oh, wait a minute, that's my basement, then it's egregious, right? And then you would say, I think you would then say, Merrick Garland was justified in authorizing the search warrant. Kind of vague, though, the way the Washington Post wrote it. Garland then comes out, he calls Trump's bluff. Justice files a motion to unseal the warrant and the inventory, not the affidavit. I've gone through this several times. I think POTUS listeners get by now the difference between an affidavit that gets filed, provided to the magistrate judge from whom they are seeking the search warrant. That's different from the warrant and the inventory. But here's what you most need to know, and I've said this so many times, but I'll say it again. Donald Trump has been in possession of the warrant and the inventory since the raid took place. Nothing stops him from releasing it on his own. Yesterday on air, I talked about how David French said, he'll release it when it suits him. He hasn't needed to do that because he's been winning, at least with his base so far. So Garland calls his bluff. Trump last night says, okay, actually, I'll read to you what he posted to Truth Social. Not only will I not oppose the release of documents related to the un-American, unwarranted, unnecessary raid and break-in of my home in Palm Beach, Florida, Mar-a-Lago, I'm going a step further by encouraging the immediate release of these documents, even though they've been drawn up by radical left Democrats and possible future political opponents who had a strong and powerful vested interest in attacking me, much as they have done for the last 6 years. So when we see the documents, will we get beyond our partisan lenses? No, is the answer to that question. Here's something significant. I didn't hear any conservative media outlets before Trump said he wouldn't oppose this call for him to release them. And I listened very attentively. I was totally dialed in yesterday because I was genuinely curious to see how is this going to play in different quarters. No one in the conservative media that I heard or watched was saying, hey, President Trump, release the warrant, release the inventory. And then last night in prime time, hat tip to Brian Stelter because he pointed this out. I wanted to see, well, what will be the reaction on Fox? And why am I so attuned to the reaction on Fox? Because that is where the real Republican political leadership lies. It's not at the RNC and it's not in the Congress. They take their marching orders from these talking heads, as I've said countless times. So what did you get last night? Jesse Waters on Fox said that a liberal librarian wanted boxes of materials and Trump kept cooperating even when they came back with a subpoena in June. Some of the stuff in storage wasn't even documents. It was golf balls and Oval Office raincoats. Trump is a memento guy, totally downplaying this. Brian Kilmeade, filling in for Tucker Carlson, read part of the Washington Post story aloud to Laura Trump and turned it into a joke. Did you see any nuclear reports at the Mar-a-Lago club, maybe around the pool or the lifeguard stand? Okay, here comes Laura Ingraham now, 10 p.m., ridicules Garland and says, it looks like they laundered their latest explanation for the search through the Washington Post, saying the nuclear document reference could mean anything, right? It could be a printout from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency or the Department of Energy. Well, I mean, it is vague, but not to be discounted until we know. So if anyone, well, I should say if anyone's in the office today, who knows who goes to the office anymore, but if anybody's in the office today, around the water cooler, again, all with an eye toward my poll question, which asks, will we ever reach consensus? Here's an illustration as to why I think we will not reach consensus. The Democrat will say, see, there was a subpoena and he didn't comply, so the search was okay. And then the Republican response will be, but he handed over some documents. So why didn't they issue another subpoena or file a motion to compel? Democrats, if Donald Trump was so victimized, he could just produce the warrant. Republican response, well, no, we don't want the warrant and the inventory. We want the affidavit. Democrat, these were nuclear documents. There was urgency here. Republican response, it was signed on a Friday and they didn't execute it until a Monday. If it was really that urgent, they'd have gone out there that day. And of course, the most significant development related to all of this is the fact that a guy was at the Capitol on January 6th, killed by law enforcement in Ohio yesterday after appearing at the Cincinnati field office with weapons. A social media account bearing his name made a post on Truth Social, the social media platform founded by Donald Trump, referencing an attempt to storm the FBI office and encouraging others online to prepare for a revolutionary type war. The post about the FBI office attack was made minutes after the Ohio State Highway Patrol said that the incident had just begun. So scary stuff. All this has consequences. Words have consequences. Microphones have consequences. TV cameras have consequences. People are out there listening and weighing every word, and some of them are unhinged. Keep that in mind. There is other news in the world. Yesterday's poll result at Smerconish.com. Do you support that part of the Inflation Reduction Act that will give the IRS $45.6 billion for enforcement? 68.98, let's call it 70-30, said yes. Here's another interesting story. I'm going to put on my hat for this. Tuesday is election day in Wyoming, and by all accounts, Liz Cheney's about to lose. In fact, her 11th hour tactic or technique to try and hang on to her seat is that she's appealing to Wyoming Democrats, independents as well. Mailers and campaign web pages include instructions on how voters can change their party affiliation to cast a vote in the GOP primary, which is August 16. Her main challenger is an attorney named Harriet Hageman, who's endorsed by President Trump. I mean, it's just a stunning thought that here's Liz Cheney. Well, it's not a coincidence. I mean, this is why she's in jeopardy. Here she is playing this prominent role relative to the January 6th investigation, and she's going to be the latest of the 10 Republicans who voted for impeachment to either retire or go down in defeat. So Liz Cheney's election is next week. Ominous news relative to climate change. This comes from NPR. The Arctic is heating up nearly 4 times faster than the Earth as a whole, according to brand new research. In the last 43 years, the region has warmed 3.8 times faster than the planet as a whole, so say the authors of a study just published in Communications, Earth, and Environment. Additional health or science news. This is a good thing. This comes from CNBC. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has eased its COVID-19 guidelines, saying that the virus now poses a much lower risk of severe illness, hospitalization, and death compared to earlier in the pandemic. Today is the 12th of August. I'm a product of a time when going back to school meant like the Wednesday after Labor Day. What happened to that? Where did this trend come from whereby the third week in August, kids are back in school? I don't know. But when I read this CDC story, that's mostly what I think of. Thank goodness that the schools are going to open and not have to go through the heightened procedures that we have relative to COVID. You've heard of the 988 Suicide Hotline from the folks. I'm trying to think of where I pulled this from. Bear with me one second. This is an important story, and I want to make sure that I get it right. This is a story about the 988 Suicide Hotline. Oh, Kaiser Health News. That's right, Kaiser Health News. I love their reporting on health. So this 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline has been launched this month. Many health providers, researchers, and advocates celebrated with that launching. Unfortunately now, the hope that this would be an alternative to people calling 911 in a mental health emergency is being dampened with the online reaction, because certain bloggers are saying that if you call 988, you're running the risk of police involvement, involuntary treatment at emergency rooms or psychiatric hospitals, and the emotional and financial toll of those experiences. And so some are being dissuaded from using that line. I hope they can address those concerns and make it easier for people to call for relief when they need it. From the LA Times today, by the way, all headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. You know, in addition to all the Trump and all the Mar-a-Lago news, and I've got all of that covered at the website and in the daily newsletter, but I've got everything else that I just find interesting that I think you would want to know about, including Nicholas Goldberg's column from the LA Times today talking about a creepy battle over Charles Manson's paltry estate. A depressing and pathetic battle is going on in a Los Angeles courtroom to win control of the paltry belongings of the notorious murderer and cult leader, Charles Manson. All that's at stake in this dispute are some of the clothes and maybe 2 or 3 guitars that he owned at the Corcoran State Prison, where he died in 2017. Okay, so 5 years on, the battle is still taking place. Why is it taking place? Because, sadly, people really want to own some of the morbid crap that was owned by him just to say that they have some of his possessions. Jesse Jackson now getting in on the Sesame Place controversy. From the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Reverend Jesse Jackson on Thursday met in New York with the CEO of Sesame Place's parent company to discuss racism allegations that erupted after several recent viral videos of costume characters at the park appearing to dismiss or ignore Black children. I keep abreast of this story, told you yesterday that the Rosita character is no more. Everybody is now getting sensitivity training, and yet as far as we know, they never fired the person who was inside that costume, which I find to be significant. Do you ever take a carriage ride in New York City or anywhere else for that matter? I must say I've done it in the past in Central Park and have fond memories of having done so. I don't know if I would do it again. There's a New York Post story about an exhausted carriage horse that collapsed during the evening rush in Manhattan on Wednesday, lying on the asphalt while the driver repeatedly struck him and ordered him to get up. This was at 9th Avenue and 45th Street in the section called Hell's Kitchen. Get up, get up, get up. Come on, man, get up. The frustrated driver commanded as traffic backed up on the busy avenue at about 5 p.m. As you can imagine, a crowd gathers. People take offense to the fact that it looks like the guy is whipping the exhausted horse. Cops show up, douse the horse with water, and are able to get the horse back to his feet. And then the police apparently take the horse somewhere for treatment. Baby powder. Yes, baby powder is in the news. J&J is dropping talcum powder globally because of all the lawsuits. Johnson & Johnson said that it plans to stop selling its legacy talc-based baby powder products globally in 2023, a move that comes amid continued legal battles and years after the company discontinued the product in the US and in Canada. I confess, I have a habit. I love Johnson's baby powder, and I have a habit of just taking a little bit and throwing it in the sheets because it just makes the bed yes, the Bombas sheets. That's right, because it just makes the bed smell so clean. What else did I want to point out? I'm limited on time. I'm trying to get to everything. Story about how airline seats, as you know, have been getting smaller and smaller for years. Maybe the shrinkage is coming to an end because now the FAA is taking public comment and trying to get the airlines to expand them. I mean, I know what's expanding, and that is all of our fannies. And the seats are getting more and more narrow. That's a problem. And finally, I guess this sad story, Anne Hesh, they say is not going to make it. Anne Hesh's team shared a new update on her health Thursday, stating that she suffered a severe anoxic brain injury and is not expected to survive following a car crash last week. Tons of news beyond Mar-a-Lago and beyond Trump, all at Smerconish.com and contained in today's newsletter. Please make sure you listen to TC After Dark. She's got a great new podcast episode. I'll be back on YouTube 7:30 Saturday morning with a preview of the Saturday CNN program. The CNN program at this stage in a total state of flux because we got to see which way all of the Trump issues are going to be resolved today before we know how to commit all of our time tomorrow. So vote on today's poll question, which asks, when we finally know what's in those documents, will we reach consensus? And here on POTUS, make sure you stay tuned for the Steve Scully program. Have a great weekend. See you, everybody.